Hey, welcome to Inside the Album. I'm Don Seckler. That's Tommy Hilkin.
That's me, Tommy Hilkin. That's Don Seckler.
And today we are here to talk about the album 10 by Pearl Jam. Now, I have to give a little disclaimer. I am an enormous Pearl Jam fan. I've seen them 20, 30 times. I
Woof.
love this band. All-time great album for me. Tommy, what's your take on Pearl Jam?
I like Pearl Jam. I think my life ended in 1979 musically. So we have a mutual love of music, but somewhere along the way I got stuck a little bit. I know the radio hits. I know about Pearl Jam, but I'm here for you today. This is to celebrate my buddy Don Seckler's favorite.
Thank you.
And
I
by the way,
appreciate
this
that.
is Inside the Album with Don and Tommy. All right.
Right. So we're going to dive inside. We'll give Tommy a little bit of education here, but you always have a great perspective. And that's why I love having you.
Thanks.
You and I working on this together has been phenomenal. I'm really having a great time and I love hearing your perspective on all this stuff. So,
Yeah, it's great. Thanks, Don.
yeah, so happy. And we're getting a lot of interest. A lot of people are listening and downloading, and you can catch us on YouTube if you like video, on every other podcast audio platform. We're on Spotify, we're on Google, we're on Apple. So subscribe, like, give us a good review, do all those things for us. It'll really help us out. We really appreciate it.
I got a call the other day from a friend I haven't heard in a long time, man. And he's a rock and roll guy. And he said, I love what you guys did with Abbey Road. I wanted to share
Great.
that with you here instead of calling and tell you. I loved what you did with Abbey Road. So
Yeah.
something's working for us. It's our love of rock and roll.
We loved it. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
great album. We had a great, I
Oh.
think that was one of our best episodes so far. It's
Mhm.
it's a phenomenal all-time great album.
Great.
So tell us about our charity partner. We're working with Music for Mark. So tell us all about Music for Mark, Tom.
Well, the reason we're doing Inside the Album is, yes, we love what we're doing, but it also gives exposure to our foundation, which is called Music for Mark. What we want to do is we love music. Music has meant the world to us. So how can we continue bringing music to the world? We're doing it through Music for Mark, which is a way to bring musical lessons, musical instruments to kids of the world, right through our foundation. We will supply them with everything they need, continue bringing this great art to the world. Listen, music goes away, we're done. Face it, plain and simple. So musicformark.com, check it out. That's our foundation. That's how we're going to bring music to the world.
Yeah, so looking forward to being able to help out kids, get instruments in kids' hands, get them lessons, and give them a taste and let them try something. You never know what you like until you try it. So it's so important, especially with kids, to get them and have them give a shot at something that they may end up loving and could make a career out of. So that's awesome.
And as simple as this, folks, listen, it could be a harmonica, it could be a tambourine, whatever it might be. We want to bring music to the world.
Whatever it is, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk. We're going to talk about Pearl Jam. This is Pearl Jam's first album, and let's walk through who's in the band. So everybody knows Eddie Vedder, the singer. When you see the early days, you see him climbing on the scaffolding and diving into the crowd and doing all that crazy stuff that started happening in the late '80s, early '90s. You also have Stone Gossard, who is the one of the guitar players. Mike McCready usually is the lead guitar player. Jeff Ament, who is the bass player. And on this album, the drummer was Dave Krusen. So Pearl Jam has, it's kind of like Spinal Tap. They've gone through several drummers throughout their career. Right now in Pearl Jam, they have Matt Cameron, who used to be in Soundgarden. He's been playing with Pearl Jam the longest, but at this time it was Dave Krusen. And an unfortunate situation that happened with Dave, he had a real drinking problem, and the guys gave him a lot of chances back in the day, and he just couldn't get his stuff together. So he ended up quitting the band at the end of the recording of the album and going into rehab to kind of get his life together. And so he was on the recording of the album, but then was immediately out of the band.
Yeah.
So we look back, this album was released in August of 1991, the end of August. So, recorded over the spring, summer, and then the album was released at the end of August. And at the time, this is when grunge was, grunge, for lack of a better term, was really starting to take hold. So you had bands like Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Nirvana. You had other bands like Mudhoney and some of these less popular bands that were really driving this scene. And this scene was wholly formed around Seattle. So it was
Hmm.
really based in that Northwest. And, they say grunge fashion, which was, you remember the guys with the Doc Martens and a lot of times shorts and flannel shirts. And Tom is representing with his flannel today.
It's all I could bring to the game was the shirt. It's
Right.
all.
And yeah. And so, so the bands, they wore flannel because they lived in Seattle and it was cold and rainy a lot of the time. It wasn't really kind of a fashion statement. I think they were pushing back a little bit against the hair metal. This is kind of the death of the hair bands. So they had longer hair, but there was no hairspray. And they were going out and playing shows in t-shirts and ripped jeans. And the hair bands were in spandex with the hair teased out and makeup and that kind of stuff. And the interesting thing at that time was you started to see some of these hair bands try to kind of co-opt the grunge look, at least. So you had a situation where you had, I think it was Winger, and all of a sudden Winger is wearing, flannel and not teasing their hair. And it was just such a fake thing for them.
Winger just made the podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, that's not going to happen again. So enjoy that mention.
Let me take you where we're going here. I just wanted to throw it out to you that you were saying it was more of a scene, right, than a genre.
Right.
And with that, I always was thinking this morning, I wanted to talk to you a little bit throughout the history of rock and roll. People had to put labels on things because it was different. You got the 50s, your Fats Domino, your Chuck Berry's, you go through your 60s and it goes into Elvis, right? Then the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. And you think about it, even the 70s became classic rock.
Right.
Right. Then the 80s brought us the new wave, right? So from the 70s into the 80s, punk, new wave. And then the 90s rolled around and we needed something new and it came along and it was labeled as grunge. Right.
And it's right. And people like to put stuff in boxes, right?
Yeah.
So
but what is it? It's rock
and roll, baby.
Rock and roll.
You had like bands like Alice in Chains and Nirvana. Nirvana especially, I think, was heavier on the punk side than on the rock side. But then Soundgarden and Pearl Jam were kind of heavy hard rock bands, so a little more classic rocky. So it wasn't, it was not everybody, the good thing about this was all these bands knew each other. So they were all friends. They were all hung out together. They played shows together.
Right.
You had the situation with Temple of the Dog, which we'll get into a second, where Chris Cornell from Soundgarden had the guys from Pearl Jam playing in a band as a tribute to another guy who had just passed away. So, we'll get into that a little bit. But it was a community. So that's the thing. Yeah. This group of bands were a community. And to this day, the ones who are still around are still friendly and play together. So
doesn't matter where it was, right? You think about the 60s, you had the Village, and then San Francisco became a big spot to be in the 70s. So there's always a city that really adopts or things grow from. So there's it's always been going on forever that there's a spot, Memphis, Nashville, right? We could name the city and everything grew from there. Well, so this is where it was all happening.
Yeah, and look at the Tom Petty scene, in the 70s, where you had all the Eagles and Tom Petty and all those bands, Linda Ronstadt and Fleetwood Mac, and they're all kind of friends, and they lived in that same area. And what was it, Laurel Canyon, I think it was, right? Is that what it was? Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So certainly, it all grows from one spot, and really what it is everybody, gravitates to it. This is the scene. This is the place to be. This is where I'm going to be seen. But, I want to bring up something about Nirvana. You were saying much more punker. And for Kurt Cobain really didn't enjoy Pearl Jam. So I want to throw that out there. He really was more of a punk guy. And he said Pearl Jam started to put in much more lead guitar. And
there was
Johnny Ramone never played a lead in his life.
Right. And so the funny thing about that is, so there was some back and forth between Kurt and Pearl Jam.
Right.
But I think a lot of it was kind of overblown and more blown up in the press than you know. In the end, I think right before Kurt died, he and Eddie were kind of friendly and
Oh,
stuff
they were
like
great
that.
friends. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it worked out in the end, but you know, that, and I think a lot of that too, it's kind of like the rap stuff in the 90s too, where it was East Coast, West Coast. So I think a lot of that was amplified by the magazines, by the rap magazines and things like
What,
that.
what's rap? Rap? I know who Coolio is. I know who
There you
Gangsta's
go.
Paradise, baby. Come
So
on.
so so the band is just starting out. We're gonna talk about the origins of the band a little bit here, but I also wanted to talk about the success of this album. So it was a hugely successful album, sold over 13 million copies,
Mm,
made it all the way to #2 on Billboard, and at the time it was pretty heavy. So this was again a heavier band getting very popular, but they were kept out of the #1 slot on Billboard by Billy Ray Cyrus
Billy
and,
Ray.
and the Achy Breaky Heart. You remember that?
Uh, now, yes, I have to admit, I might not know Pearl Jam, but I know Achy. Thanks for pointing that out.
Wow.
Wow. How could you not, dude? Everybody had a mullet. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
So the cover of the album is interesting. It shows the band kind of all doing this, and we're showing it here in the video, but they're doing this kind of, every man in, hands in, like a team, like a basketball team almost.
Yep.
Their hands raised,
All
and
for
it's
one.
them against the world.
Yep.
So Jeff Ament, the bass player, is super artistic, does a lot of the artwork for the band, and his brother owns is also an artist, has a poster company where they do rock posters, concert posters. So Jeff did this huge wooden cutout of the band that he created, and they actually shot that. And then they, went ahead and so he did this huge wooden cutout of the band that they shot.
Mhm.
And the original album cover was supposed to be a little bit more burgundy, but it turned out a little pinker than they liked. So the picture of the band in the front with the cutout was supposed to be black and white against that burgundy background. So the actual cover that you see on the album these days is not originally what they intended, but it kind of is what it is.
And that's a life-size cutout.
Yeah. So so
Which
this
is
guy,
crazy.
they did, crazy artistic
sculpture.
talent. Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, so the band came about kind of out of the ruins of another band. So there was another band called Mother Love Bone, which it had some initial success, but the lead singer Andy Wood died of a heroin overdose. I think it was either right before or right after their first album was released. So in that band was Jeff Ament and Stone Gossard, the bass player and guitarist who eventually became Pearl Jam. So of course, Andy Wood dies. They're all, they're friends. Soundgarden is friends with them, and everybody's, losing their mind because their friend is dead. So Jeff and Stone kind of drifted apart. Stone Gossard starts playing with Mike McCready, who was also in Seattle at the time in another band called Shadow. And so they started practicing and writing a little bit of stuff. And then Mike McCready encouraged Stone to get Jeff Ament back involved. So Stone reaches out to Jeff. They come back together. They went ahead and recorded 5 demo songs with Matt Cameron, who at the time was the drummer for Soundgarden. And they put them on a cassette basically to distribute to their friends and try and find a singer, because they got into a groove where they were doing some stuff. Stone was getting a little heavier with his playing. Mother Love Bone was kind of like, I want to say they were almost like a funky glam band. So they started writing a little bit heavier, put all these songs on this cassette and started to try and find a singer for the band.
I wonder if the name Mother Love Bone is taken, because if not, I'm going to name my band that from here on out.
Yeah, you might have some issues with that. They do have a record out.
It's a heck of a name, though.
Yeah, right. So, and they, it was a pretty good band. They had the song Stardog Champion is probably the one that most people would know. And then there are some other songs that they had written that Mother Love Bone did that Pearl Jam plays sometimes now in concert.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So as they get this cassette out there, they're trying, okay, how are we going to find a singer? So eventually the cassette gets to Jack Irons, who is the former drummer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He is in San Diego and gives the tape to Eddie Vedder, who at the time is like a night watchman and he's a surfer and, he's
Mm,
in some bands and stuff, but nothing crazy is happening for him. Eddie takes the demo with the 5 songs and writes lyrics for 3 of the songs. So these lyrics became the songs Footsteps, Once, and Alive. Now, Footsteps is not on 10, but it was released as a B-side on the album. But these songs were basically intact. So the demo went to Eddie. Eddie wrote the lyrics, and now they've got 3 solid songs. So these songs are they're known as the Mama Son trilogy because it tells a story. So it starts with Alive, where the person in the song finds out that his stepfather, who he thinks is his real father, is not his real father, and his actual father is dead. And then there's some incest with the mom, which is a little weird. So then he goes crazy, and in Once, he now is losing his mind and killing people, and he's violent. And then Footsteps is the last step of that, where he's sitting on death row and kind of reflecting on, what happened and all these things. So it's this crazy story with these songs that came together very, very quickly. And so they send the tape back to Seattle. The guys listened to it and they're like, all right, we got to get this guy up here now because this is amazing. So they flew him up to Seattle and they just started writing the rest of the album. So, I mean, it's like an epic story, with all these kind of connection points that if you miss one of them, this band never happens.
right. It all
Think
just
about how
came
crazy
together.
that is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When you got a
And it-
band that's got, and they're still going, recording albums and touring on a regular basis. So this band's going on, they're at 30 years now, and one misconnection there and nothing happens.
And and from what I see, they survived a lot. You would know, the truly, heroin and booze and just ripping people up in
Yeah,
that whole, group, that whole gathering out in Seattle became a really, really tough time for people as human beings.
it
So
did.
to
And they
stay
lost.
together all this time.
And they
Right?
were friends with all those guys. So Lane Staley, Mike McCready, when Lane Staley from Alice in Chains was really bad on heroin and drugs, Mike McCready put together a band called Mad Season to try, because Mike had troubles with alcohol and had cleaned
Mm,
up. And so he
yeah.
went and got Lane involved in this band called Mad Season, which is actually pretty good, and tried to get Lane around other people who were sober and get him back, hopefully healthy.
Wow. Yeah.
In the end, it didn't work, but again, a terrible loss. You lose these guys to drugs and alcohol, and we all know what that's like.
Well, it's interesting with Mike McCready. The one thing I did know, because I'm a big fan, he's a big fan of Ace Frehley.
Yes, yeah,
Right. Right.
and
So there's a model, there's a role model for you.
well, yeah, exactly. But what's really cool? So I saw Pearl Jam in Madison Square Garden. I think it was 2003, and they had Ace Frehley come out and play, and they did Black Diamond by Kiss, which is not the first Kiss song most people think about, but it's an amazing song.
Amazing song. We're going to cover this, but you just tell me when you want to hop in, because you said
Sure.
this is your album, this is you. But when we were having a conversation, you said that live performances of this band was really what got you going, got your heart
Yeah.
going, the excitement
Yeah,
behind it.
yeah.
If you want to touch on that along the way, I'd like to hear a little bit about the live experiences.
Yeah, well, the live experience to this day is insane. So to me, the Pearl Jam studio albums are the starting point.
Gotcha.
Some of their songs, they'll morph over the years and they've gotten different. Like, and you'll see one of the songs on this album is changed in a big way. It's much faster live and it goes crazy with the solo and that part. But it's a band where they get out on stage every night and they're doing 3-hour shows every night. So it's really like it moves you and everything comes to the next level. We had one show in Madison Square Garden. I think it was actually that same show with Ace Frehley, where this actual stage was bouncing up and down because there was so much, energy, and the crowd was going crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And so Eddie asked the guys in the garden, he said, the only people that's ever happened for is the Grateful Dead and Bruce Springsteen.
Wow. So you can feel the vibration in the whole garden.
Yeah,
Which is
it's
the mecca of
insane.
rock and
So
roll.
I definitely, if people have not seen Pearl Jam live, it's extremely hard to get tickets because they do have, a lot of really, really, rabid fans. They love to see the band live, but
Yeah.
it's really just a great performance. And it's so much, they take the records to the next level,
Yeah.
kind of like the Dead. The Dead's different, obviously, because they're a jam band.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for the Dead,
Yeah.
the recordings are a starting point, and same thing for Pearl Jam.
A lot of bands, when you hear their albums, nothing compares to the live. Nothing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Oh,
some
yeah.
of my favorite bands are all about going and seeing them live.
Sure. Yeah. I'd always prefer live to recorded every day.
No doubt.
Interesting fact about the band. Originally, they were called Mookie Blaylock after the basketball player from the New Jersey Nets.
I love that.
And yeah. And so, they said, well, we can't really use his name because we're going to get sued or whatever. But they ended up using the number 10 as the album title in honor of Mookie Blaylock, basically.
What's interesting to me about that is the fact of all people, Mookie Blaylock. Right?
Right. I know, right?
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan, Mookie Blaylock.
I think it might have been a story about like a basketball card that somebody had, or they had a pack of basketball cards. And they go, "Oh, here's a good name, Mookie Blaylock."
Because I found that interesting. That they were fans of Mookie Blaylock. I have no idea why. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I got you.
So when they started out, Jeff Ament, it was really at the beginning, it was Jeff and Stone's band, because they kind of pulled everybody together and got everything rolling. They had written most of the songs. Eddie did the lyrics, obviously, but it was still kind of Jeff and Stone's band at the very beginning. And so Jeff said at the time that he knew they were a long way from being a real band because they hadn't played, like they wrote some songs, and, Jeff and Stone knew each other from the other bands, but they hadn't really gone out and played shows as this band. So their idea was, we wanted to get in, record this album, and then use it as an excuse to get on the road, and again, because they said, we know we can be great, but we need to get out there and play. And again, this is a theme we see with every band. The more they play, the better they get. And these guys knew that.
No doubt.
And they had, they had been touring, and these guys have been in bands and played a little bit, but with this particular band, they needed to do that. So Jeff said when the album was released, he was hoping it would sell 100,000 copies and that he would say that was a total success. So they passed that by, few million.
Don't ask me to do the math, but go ahead.
Yeah, right. As I said before about the thing with Dave Krusen, he quit and went into rehab after the album was done. And he said, look, these guys, they were super good. They gave me many, many chances, but he just couldn't get his stuff together, which is kind of sad, but I'm glad that, he was able to get cleaned up. Also, Matt Chamberlain also toured with Pearl Jam over the summer of '91 after Dave Krusen left. So he was the drummer. He was in the video for Alive. And then after he left Pearl Jam, he joined G.E. Smith and the Saturday Night Live band.
Wow.
And then they had Dave Abruzzi, who then came to play behind the drum kit for the next couple of years. And then Matt Cameron after that.
I could throw it out to you. I've seen the guy from Saturday Night Live twice, in concert. Amazing. Yeah. I'm sorry, you're talking about names going by. G.E. Smith.
Exactly. Yeah.
Twice. Yeah. Just throw it out there. Phenomenal.
Yeah. Great band. And those guys, that Saturday Night Live band has amazing musicians in it all the time. It's so good.
Through the years, when you think about it, I always tell everybody, you listen to the Blues Brothers, you thought they were like a prank band, but the band behind them was like some of the greatest musicians in the world.
Oh yeah, yeah. Amazing.
Maybe someday we'll cover that, Don. We'll cover the Blues Brothers. But
there you go. I would love to do a Blues Brothers episode.
And I can talk a little more.
So let's take a listen to, there's this intro that is then at the beginning of the album that isn't listed. It's called Master Slave. It's kind of like a little blues jam. And it starts at the beginning. It's a little slow. Let's take a listen to that. And then it bookends. So the whole thing is at the end of the album on the second half of the track Release. So it's not listed on the album anyway, but let's take a listen. So it's very kind of quiet and builds up, you know, and it's just kind of almost kind of hippie-ish, right?
A little hippie-ish. You know, it's got a little bit going on. I don't want to say what I feel like yet. I get a little Phil Collins. And,
right? Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you accept that. I didn't want to throw that out there and get you angry.
Yeah, I feel that. No, you know.
Yeah.
It's
Peter
a little
Gabriel. It's the
yeah.
I hate to say it's the progression through the 80s of the type of music in the background of it.
Yeah. So, you know, I guess it's a full track and there's not really words to it. They don't, sometimes they'll play that in concert before once just to kind of start off that song. You'll hear that as they come out or something like that.
Right.
So it's interesting that Stone Gossard does not appear on this track. So he was either sick or at the dentist or something, they said. They had a couple days in the studio, and so they just started working on this, and they said, okay, we'll just use this kind of at the beginning and the end of the record, and this will bookend the album.
It's perfect.
Yeah. So here's Once. This is the next song on the album. Actually, the first song, but listed.
Not one of the bookends.
Here's where I like it. So this song is just basically, and you know, and it's part of that trilogy that we talked about, that Mama Son. This is the part where he's just losing his shit. He's got a 16 gauge buried under his coat. Once I could control myself, it just total high energy. And, you know, if you look at the videos or the video of them in like videos of them in concert, back in the day, they were kind of like, this was like, they were like Raging Against the Machine, to kind of borrow another band's name, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's the end of the 80s. They're coming back to, you know, straight ahead rock and roll, just like that young person. I don't give a shit. I'm angry and you know, stuff is flying around and we're going to rock.
I'm an old person. I feel that way.
So, yeah. And so this is, again, the basis. When you see this live, the energy just like explodes in an arena, and it's crazy.
You know what you were saying about, you know, straightforward rock and roll. So I'm listening, you know, and, you know, the guitar work in there is far from punk. In the lead into that song. It's got a little jazzy little twist to it that's phenomenal.
Mike McCready's one of Mike McCready's huge influences. He loves Kiss, which is great, but one of his huge influences is Stevie Ray Vaughan. So he leans towards the blues side, but you know, it works because they got it. They're distorting it and it's getting heavier, and you know, it really moves with the song really well and builds up. And that's a lot of their songs are kind of, you know, these songs that build up to this crescendo, which is, you know, again, that live, you know, where you feel it and you're waiting for it to come and then bam, right?
Yeah, I got you. You know, I like what you said though. Realistically, when you think about everything, no matter what you look at it, rock and roll will always take us back to the blues. It will always.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. So no matter what we're talking about, somewhere, somehow, everything has been played before. It's just where you're putting it, you know? So no matter what's going on in rock and roll, it's still rock and roll.
Right. And it's how, you know, it's how you're always taking, like you said, you're always kind of taking something. There's only a limited number of chords and notes and you're just rearranging them, you know, but if you do it with enough style and you can really affect people's emotions and people get an emotional attachment to those songs, it can make a big difference.
No, I feel what you're saying about the build up live, man. Like all of a sudden, you know, you're going and then you're going insane. It's just taking you with it. Beautiful.
Yeah. It takes you on a ride. So.
Oh yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. So the next song on the album is Even Flow. So this song, and you can hear there's a lot of wah and effects, and they were using a lot of these things, but that's a very kind of retro guitar sound, right?
Oh, no doubt. It's exactly what I'm thinking about, even just the way it's being played. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean it's
definitely.
heavier maybe than like even like a Hendrix or something like that, because it's a little more, you can feel that grr, which is
So you know
great.
what I was just thinking? I'm gonna throw it out to you because I know how much you love this. So did Eddie fit the band or did the band fit Eddie?
Well, I think initially Eddie fit the band, and then as they went on in their career, it became the band fitting Eddie.
Okay.
The thing is, here you have a band here, so you have a band now with 5 songwriters. So
Wow.
with Pearl Jam, the songs are written by Eddie. This first one that was just mostly the lyrics. But Eddie's a writer. Jeff Amen's a great songwriter. Stone Gossard is a great songwriter. Mike
Wow.
McCready writes some of the songs, and even now, Matt Cameron is a songwriter. So even the drummer is writing songs in this band, and I
That's
think that goes a long way to helping keep the band together. I think,
well, I think so because
because
everybody's
everybody's
getting credit for
contributing.
being part of the album.
Yeah, right,
Yeah, you know
exactly.
what?
So
You
you're
know
not.
as well. When that one guy takes over, we just discussed this on Abbey Road, how it was going,
Right.
right? So it's the same thing. You're working as a group. That's why the album cover was all for one, and they really believed in that. So it's really cool to listen to that. I didn't realize that all 5 guys were songwriters. So
Yeah,
that's
so
some talent.
I don't know if the early drummers wrote so much. I know that Matt Cameron does right now, though. But
Yeah,
again, it's not the situation where it's Jagger Richards and you're just going to play what they write.
right.
Bill
Right.
Wyman, did Bill Wyman ever write a song for the Stones? I don't think so.
Question better than that. Did Bill Wyman ever care?
Yeah, well, that's the other side of it, right?
Yeah, yeah. Bill Wyman was really along for the ride, man. Him and
Yeah,
Charlie Watts were made for each other, but that's another
exactly.
story.
So I think this environment where, and Eddie Vedder was a brand new guy, like he just came to
Right.
Seattle and was on this album. He was on the Temple of the Dog album, which they did for Andy Wood. So that was Chris Cornell with the guys from Pearl Jam, with Mike and Jeff and Stone, and they brought Eddie in and let Eddie do the backup parts on the Temple of the Dog song Hunger Strike. So it was the scene was very welcoming, and I think that helped create this group of guys that had the ability then to continue on for 30 years and beyond, because a lot of bands can't take that, because it's just 2 guys doing the writing or 1 guy doing the writing.
It's a very good point you're making because you don't hear a lot of bands straight through the 80s that are even still close to being together, right? Come and
No.
go, come and
Right,
go, come and
right.
everybody became disposable. And we both know, maybe we'll discuss it, but it was the MTV era, so
Yeah.
people their only goal was to be seen.
Right. And so this was the big video, the first big video for Pearl Jam was Even
There you
Flow.
go.
So I don't know if you've seen it, but they're in a club and they're going crazy. Eddie's climbing up jumping into the crowd, and all sorts of mayhem and just crowd mosh pit, and it was insane. But again, it's that energy that you see it and you go, "Oh man, I got to get in there. I got to feel that."
It's a great song.
Yeah, so this song is about a homeless man. So they say, thoughts arrive like butterflies. So he's, losing it a little bit and he's homeless. But the thing about the song, Dave Cruzen, the drummer, who said at the time, it was a super hard song to record. So he was saying that they went through it like 50 to 70 times, and they had trouble. He had trouble like getting between the sections of the song. And,
Hmm.
it was another thing where, again, he said that after all those recordings, they kind of hated each other. I'm sure they didn't hate each other, but they were just kind of like we've talked about before.
Yep.
Too many takes, I don't know if it always is the best thing.
Well, you know what it is? I can talk from, myself as a creative person, right? Everything gets created twice. It gets created in your head, then you got to do it physically, right?
Right.
So it's already, you got it done here. And as you're doing it, it doesn't sound right to what you're hearing. And you got 5 guys who are creative. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
some conflict there, you're not
Yeah.
getting the same thing together. So the creativity is what makes it hard to get it out, to
Yeah.
make it sound just right.
For sure.
Yeah.
The
Right.
other interesting thing about Even Flow is that Stone Gossard actually wrote the lead riff. And then he gave it to Mike McCready, and Mike McCready said it's him trying to pretend to be Stevie Ray Vaughan. So there's that kind of
Ah,
classic rock blues type of feel for it. You know, and Mike said it's a blatant ripoff, a tribute. But he said he feels the same way about like Black and Alive, and for Alive, which is coming up a little bit, he said he copied Ace Frehley's solo from She, which was copied from Robbie Krieger's solo in The Doors' 5 to 1. So you get
there
this
you
whole
go.
chain of, you know,
Yeah.
guys who like other bands and going
Right.
ahead and using, you know, taking from them a little bit and then making it their own.
Dude, you got to realize everybody's influenced by somebody or somehow. It's how it works. You know, you put a record on and all of a sudden you become a guitar player. There's going to be a riff you're going to be playing that you remembered as you were a kid. So it's
Yeah.
not the worst thing in the world. And like you said, he's giving credit where credit's due. He's not stealing anything.
Right.
He's stealing a lick
Right.
here and
Right.
there.
Yeah.
You know?
They're not ripping it off. It's just an
Right.
influence.
It's a lick. Yeah.
So this song, the guitar solo on Even Flow, and amongst the Pearl Jam fans, they play this song pretty much every show. So a lot of the diehard Pearl Jam fans say that this is their bathroom song. It's not for me. I want to be there and see that solo because it's different every time. It was actually, the solo was actually named the #6 greatest wah solo of all time by one of the guitar magazines, I think. It might have been Guitar World. So
When you say wah,
who knew there was a
as
list
in-
of wah solos?
Like in Wah Wah Pedal Wah?
Yeah, wah wah pedal. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
All right.
so
Because there's a lot of wah out there. you
there
know,
is.
so,
There
yeah.
is. Depends on the
Number 6
band.
wah level. You made it.
Like Metallica, I don't know if you listen to a lot of Metallica, there's a lot of wah, and Kirk's playing in Metallica. And this song, like I said before, it has been played a lot of times live. They've played it 837 times in concert. So if you go on Pearl Jam's website, they have a list of every song they've ever played live. They have
That's cool.
pretty much most of their shows are available as bootlegs. You can buy them.
That's
But
great.
they have a whole database of when the song was played, which shows, where, and all this stuff. It's crazy. But almost 1,000 times they played this song live in concert. That's crazy.
Well, a lot of people got to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. True story, right?
Yeah, true story. There you go. So you know exactly when you look at the data when you left the arena. So go ahead.
Exactly.
I digress.
Matt Cameron, the drummer, you know, he wasn't in Pearl Jam at the time, but he was in Soundgarden. They were working on the album Badmotorfinger. Eddie Vedder brought up the mixes of the 10 album to the studio, and they were listening to it, and Matt heard the solo and heard the chorus from Even Flow, and he goes, "Oh my God, that's huge. It's so hooky." It had the really kind of Led Zeppelin, huge rock, you know, that kind of big arena rock feel to it. Matt Cameron still loves it and thinks that it's the quintessential Pearl Jam song. Let's take a listen to the next song on the album, which is Alive. So again, this is a song where, you know, he's telling this kind of crazy story about the kid. He's growing up. The father is dead. He doesn't know it. The stepfather is his father. The mother tells him there's incest between the mother and son, which is really weird. And then he finds out that the real father is dead and he can't get back in touch with him. And it's all these things kind of going through it. And then you have the chorus, which sounds like this. So you've got that whole chorus of "I'm still alive," which to Eddie, the story, the song, it's like a burden. It's not a joyous thing. It's like, why am I still alive? My life is
Mm,
so fucked up. My mom's
not,
sleeping with me. I don't know who my father is. Then I find out he's dead. So it was this whole burdensome thing.
yeah, you're
But
not celebrating being alive. You're wondering
no,
why.
but you
Yeah.
know what happened? So Eddie, over the years, they're doing this song all the time. It's a super popular song, probably one of the songs they're most well known for. And so what happened was, they went right into playing arenas and festivals and big shows. There was no club scene for them at all. So they saw the reaction of the crowd, and the crowd turned it into this uplifting anthem where, even though it wasn't the meaning of the song, the crowd is celebrating, we're all still alive. It's such a powerful, upbeat type of song now. So it changed Eddie's perspective on it. He said, you know what? That it's not what I originally intended, but I love it, and this is what it means to people. So they really play into it. So when you see this live, it's just insane because they turn, a lot of times the lights are on and the whole crowd is singing along, and it's very impactful as a great song.
I just wanted to tell you, as much as we're kidding in the beginning about this, I've listened to this album over and over and over without even knowing it. Just while I'm listening, I'm like, oh my God, these are the songs that come on that I never shut off, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
So it's
yeah.
like, it's not like that I was a Pearl Jam fan, but this music is incredible. So
Well,
I'm hearing it, I'm going, oh my God, this is a great song. So I've listened to this over and over and over again. Tremendous.
and I think too with music, especially, like, people get into zones of their life where sometimes you're just doing other stuff and you're not paying as much attention to music, like you're raising your kids and doing your business or whatever.
Freedom.
Yeah. So, when this came out, I had 2 little babies running around the house. I didn't go to any shows. I didn't get to see Pearl Jam or early, or Nirvana or those bands, because I was here, raising my kids.
That's the part of our life. That's
Yeah.
where I was at this point in my life, the 90s.
Exactly.
I had my kids.
Yeah, totally get that.
That's pretty cool. That's
So
a
the
great
other
way to look at it.
Yeah. So the other interesting thing about this song is they were offered $6 million to put this in a commercial, and they turned it down
Yeah.
because the commercial was for Viagra. So they showed us, the band said that the advertising, or whoever it was, people showed them these storyboards where they had this little animated penis that was singing "I'm Still Alive."
Wow. You know what? They should have went with Elton John's "I'm Still Standing."
Yeah,
You know?
right. Could you imagine though? It's like, the song is one of the core songs of their
Of
catalog.
course. Thank
And
God.
then they're gonna, there's a lot of money, but are they gonna sell it to boner pills?
That's the best. That's the best. Hey, can we use that? I just love everything. I like to see the guy who came up with the concept and said, let me call them. Let me see what
Yeah,
they think.
yeah. Let me get in front of these guys and take their
Come on, it's Pearl Jam. They'll take my call.
one of their most popular songs and have our little
Wow.
cartoon
Hey.
dick.
Let's see, when they're in their 70s and everybody's selling their catalog now. I just noticed that the other day.
Yeah, right. Bob Dylan just sold
Dylan.
everything.
A nice price tag too, 300 million.
Yeah.
Woo.
All
I
right.
said to my wife, I would have sold that 50 years ago.
Yeah,
Wow.
I read somewhere that somebody said they thought he was going to distribute the money to whatever. I don't know what
That
he's
would be
doing with it,
nice.
but
He's a good man.
he's an older guy at this point. So
Yeah,
let's
almost 80.
yeah. So let's take a listen to the next song on the album. This one is "Why Go." A lot of bass here, right? Here's Jeff Ament with that bass. Boom, boom. A lot of wah. There's your wah, right?
Wow.
She scratches a letter into a wall, made a stone, maybe someday another child won't feel
So this song is about a girl who's locked up against her will in a mental institution. And it's actually about a specific girl in Chicago that Eddie had read a story about. He has said, like, you know, it's like you have reasons to be angry when your parents who are making these decisions for you and, you know, not letting you experience your life. And evidently this girl was smoking weed or something. And, you know, I don't know if there's more to the story, but then she ended up getting locked up. And he said that then there are these institutions on the other side who are taking money and diagnosing people just to keep them sick and keep them in there and keep making the money and all. So it was kind of this, again, and kind of against the system type of song, you know, which at the time was very kind of, you know, in that energy of getting out there and raging against the machine, for lack of a better term, right?
You know, the machine goes in all you know, I think about rehabs and detoxes.
Yeah.
It's a machine, a money-making machine, by the way. But listen, on this, I'm hearing, you know, somebody has a psychedelic influence, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's Mike playing that with a wah lead, yeah.
Yeah, so somebody grew up hearing that in the background of their life. Maybe their dad, their mom, whatever it was, but there was an era where they were hearing psychedelic music.
Yeah.
It doesn't just happen like that.
Right. It's definitely that classic rock sound again. And you hear kind of that riff that Stone's playing, you know, it's a little funky, right? A little laid back, but it works in that whole heavy environment because it keeps the song moving forward, you know?
You know, and I'm so glad we're doing this because I'm smiling here. You know, I thought I'd struggle with this, but I know how much you love this and I'm watching you. But, you know, the way Eddie Vedder sings and the music is kind of like, it's two different worlds. It's kind of like like we said earlier, I can't believe how that voice and the way he rhythmically plays and sings fits the music.
Right.
It's kind of an odd.
He does a great job with that. Yeah. And you know, there are some singers who do a super good job with that kind of rhythmic lyrics. So the rhythmic singing. So, you know, the instance that I refer to a lot of times with that is in rap where it's Eminem, where it's a lyrical rhythm. So he's like bump ba da dump. It's super fast with him, but you feel it and it changes the song in a lot of ways. And there are a couple other singers I like who do that as well.
Yeah, I'm just finding it amazing that it's a perfect mix. I mean that. And I like
yeah.
The music, you know, I always listen for the music. You know that. I love guitar. I love hearing guitar. You know, the drummer, everything that comes in together, the bass line. So I listen for that. And then I realize how it just comes together. It's amazing. It's great.
It's amazing. Great song.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Black. This is the ballad on this song. And again, a hugely popular song live. No wah here. But you are going to get this bass.
Sheets of empty canvas, untouched sheets of clay, her legs spread out before me as her body held still.
So super, super pretty song, right? Just, you know, very kind of romantic. It's a song about loss and unrequited love. And then you get to this part where the buildup really starts.
And twisted thoughts that spin round my head. I'm spinning, I'm spinning how quick the sun can drive away. Now my bitter hands cradle broken glass of what was everything. All the pictures
So again, live, that moment is insane.
Yeah.
You know,
Guitar
so
work is phenomenal in the background.
yeah, and this song is another one of these build-up songs, and it's so emotional, and it's about love and that unrequited love, and you know, trying to let go, but you know, it's just a beautiful, beautiful song.
I know exactly what this song is. This is the song you play for your girlfriend if you want to get her into Pearl Jam. That's what that song is.
Yeah, it's definitely one that the ladies like for sure.
That's the first one you play for your girlfriend if you wanted to listen to Pearl Jam.
Right,
I don't care
right,
what you
because it's
say.
all about love, you know,
Uh,
and that.
Isn't it always done?
Yeah.
Isn't it always?
So they didn't, you know, they did videos on the first couple songs off the record. I think this one was the third single or fourth, I'm not sure. But they decided that they didn't want to do a video. They were not super happy with the videos they had done previously. And they said, look, I don't want in 10 years somebody to remember the video. I want them to remember the song.
It's so funny.
You know, so think about that. And that's part of, you know, what I think MTV, it became so much about the videos that even those songs to this day, you remember the video when you hear the song, like Hot for Teacher by Van Halen, or some of the ones that were super, super popular on MTV, right?
You know, and that's a great song, Hot for Teacher. So, you know, my wife and I, before I came down today to the studio, I I was talking to my wife about the 80s and going into the 90s with music. We've lived together musically 40 years. And she said, yeah, whatever happened to the 80s? I said, well, that's a whole nother story. We can't really tell that one. But I did say to her, it was the MTV years. And I wasn't a big MTV guy. I just didn't. I enjoy music as is.
Right.
And MTV took over the world. So it was kind of like everybody had to mix their music to the video to get noticed.
Right.
And to me, that was like, you know, let's stop this.
Well, and these guys were at the end, or not the end, but right in the prime of, like, MTV, I guess, peaked in like the late 80s, and then through the 90s started declining. So they were right in the middle of it. And you kind of, that was what you had to do. That's what everybody did. So they did these videos, but then they fought back on it and said, you know what, we don't want this to be the memory people have about it.
And I don't. And I know what song's coming, but go ahead.
So the next song on the album is Jeremy. Again, the bass. Now this is Jeff Ament wrote this. Harmonics on that bass.
At home, drawing pictures of mountain tops with him on top. Lemon yellow sun, arms raised in a beat.
So again, I mean, this is again another, and we talk about these albums, and this is another album where the best songs of the catalog, a lot of the best songs of the catalog, they've done great songs since this.
Yeah.
But you've got 5 songs on here that are, you know, among their best songs, and this is one of them, and that I think everybody knows, because this is probably the one that got the most you know, airplay and MTV play back in the day.
So you were mentioning it. How does this go over live? I know everybody has a song in their catalog that they have to play.
Yeah.
Is
So
this the Layla for them?
you know what? Interestingly enough, Jeremy is not a song that they play very frequently live.
I could see it.
So you're always going to get, you're almost always going to get Even Flow. A lot of times you're going to get Alive. Those two are played very frequently. Once May here and there, Why Go here and there, Black a lot. And then Jeremy is kind of one of those, they play it every so often. So when you go Pearl Jam, also when they play live, they play a different set list every night. And Eddie looks at the set lists to make sure they don't repeat them. So it's crazy, because I've seen them on one tour 5 times, all different songs. You get some repeats.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so you can't go to Pearl Jam expecting to hear greatest hits. You will hear some of their hits, but you may hear a lot of songs that you've never heard of if you're a casual fan.
And you know, when you're on tour, man, the last thing you want to do is be up on stage going through the motions.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a lot of the reason why they switched up. But you know, plus the fans like it. It draws people to the shows.
You can go 3 nights in a row.
Oh yeah, easily. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So this song, Jeremy, is actually a story about actual events that happened. It was a kid in Texas that shot
Mm.
himself in front of his classmates because they were tormenting him. And then in addition to that, there's also Eddie had back when he was a kid had a run in with a classmate in junior high. And this kid, it was a kid who Eddie and him didn't get along and they had some fights and stuff. And this kid actually brought a gun in to school and shot up the fish tank in one of the classes. So it's kind of a combination of those two stories. And the video shows the kid not directly shooting himself, but you see the kid, you know, I think I don't know, he didn't show the gun, but then they show the class and the class is splattered in blood and everything. So it's kind of, you know, it's a dark song. And the interesting thing here, it was written by Jeff Ament. And he had these two pieces of music that he wrote on acoustic guitar. Now he's a bass player, so he's writing on acoustic guitar. And then he got this Hamer 12-string bass, which is unusual. And so when he got that in, he started playing one of these pieces on it, and that became the Jeremy riff.
I like it.
Yeah, so you don't see it often, a 12-string bass. That's an unusual guitar. The other thing they did was they added a cello to it. So if you really listen, you can hear the cello in there too. But again, it's kind of that that layering that we often talk about, where they're stacking up either voices or instruments upon each other, and it really kind of widens or thickens out the sound a little bit. So let's talk about Oceans.
The currents will shift, glide me towards you. No, something's left, and we're all allowed to dream of the next. The next time we
So this song, I think, is a great example of the power of Eddie Vedder's voice on this album. Like, he's got that low baritone voice, but he can get up there sometimes, you know, and maybe not all the way as other, you know, really great singers, but you just feel the emotion in this. This is Jeff Ament and Stone Gossard's favorite song on this album. And Eddie wrote the lyrics, and he's an avid surfer. So a lot of people thought this song was actually about the ocean, but it's not. It was about his first wife, Beth.
Wow.
So that's a little interesting nugget for you. Also, they're using the guitars. They're doing some interesting things with the guitars on this. So they have an open and detuned guitars. And we've talked about that kind of changes up the sound a little bit. And so Stone Gossard was saying that it's just a super simple thing where, because of the open tuning that they're using, it's just a simple 1 or 2 fingers that go up and down the fretboard. You know, there's these little changes in it, but it has basically these 3 big movements where there's a lot of buildup. And so all of this stuff together, even though it's a very simple arrangement, it really becomes super powerful.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, love it. Another interesting story about this song, Eddie Vedder, he wrote the lyric to this song one day when he got locked out of the studio. And so it was a typical, you know, rainy day in Seattle, and the band is working on the track. He couldn't get back in. He went out to feed the parking meter and he got locked out. Fortunately, he had a pen and paper in his pocket, and he was saying that all he could hear was the bass coming through the wall. So he figured while he's locked out, he would sit down and write the lyrics to the song as he heard this muffled, you know, kind of sound from inside. That's crazy.
It's always the best when you find out literally where it all happened. You know,
Yeah.
I remember, you know, the story goes of, you know, George Harrison writing the song Bangladesh on a napkin, you know, that kind of a thing, where it's just sitting down. When I needed to write it down, it came to me. And that's a beautiful part of music, man.
Yeah.
That's
It's
the
like
pure-
those happy accidents, right? You know, those things
Yeah.
when it just pours out of you and you're at the point of the peak of your creativity. That
That's
stuff
it.
just
Pure
happens.
creativity. Exactly.
So the guy who mixed the album in England used sound effects that he created from a pepper shaker and drumsticks, and he was tapping on a fire extinguisher. So it's about 30 seconds into the song, and you can hear the pepper shaker on the left and the fire extinguisher drumming on the right. And it was very subtle, but it's that kind of stuff underneath that when you really dig in and listen to it, you're like, oh, wow, listen to that, you know. But if you don't know it's there, you may not even hear it.
You listen to the old Motown and the Supremes and Smokey Robinson, somebody was playing a chain. Just an actual metal chain in the background, right? Well,
and we had talked in Toys in the Attic about Steven Tyler playing a sugar packet just right up in front of the microphone, a sugar packet, right? Yeah, this guy's more creative with a sugar packet.
I was gonna say something we could never dream of.
Yeah, right. Somehow that didn't work out.
But it's not playing a sugar packet. I get it.
The sugar packet never worked out for me.
Nah, I wish it would have. I would have played the Sweet and Low. I would have really kicked it.
All right, so let's take a listen to Porch.
What the fuck is this world running to? You didn't leave a message, at least I could have learned your voice one last time. Daily minefield, this could be my time by you. Would you hit me? Would you hit me?
So this song live, they really they ramp it up. The speed comes up a bit, and this is one that they're quite often closing sets with. So they'll come out, they'll do a main set, and then usually 2 encores. So generally 32, 33 songs in one show. Amazing, wow. Just long shows. But this will go on, and you know the one on the album is good, but the live versions are insane. You know, they just get into it. There's crazy stuff. In the old days, you see Eddie Vedder climbing on, you know, on the scaffolding, like at Pink Pop. I think it was in 1992, or jumping off of stuff. And the band is just going on. And that jam section in the middle of it just is always insanely good. And every show it's different. So, you know, they're not playing, these things are all, when they play these songs live, all those solos are all pretty much improvised. You know, there's some themes that repeat in them, but they definitely change it up.
Yeah, you just go off on something. The best. I can see it in you, you know, as we're listening. When you talk about the live, you light up, man. So
yeah, so good. To see
another show soon.
Yeah, right. That would be great. I'm looking forward
to
it.
That would be great. Let's see if we can get 75,000 people in an arena, in a stadium.
Probably yeah. I think it may be a while, but
yeah.
So this song was also the lyrics were written by Eddie on his way up to Seattle. So he gets the tape in San Diego, writes the lyrics for those songs. They send it to him. Then they say, okay, come on up. We're going to bring you up here and audition you. On the way to Seattle, he writes the lyrics for Porch. So they get up there. They had this song pretty much written without lyrics, and it fit. So, you know, again, another happy accident. And it's definitely one of the most popular Pearl Jam songs amongst the fans. So let's talk about Garden.
Yes.
It's a little laid back here.
The direction of the eye, so misleading. The reflection of the soul, cautiously quick. I don't question her existence. I just question our modern need.
So this part where it builds up is really crazy good.
I will walk with my hands bound. I will
So the song is about a military cemetery, basically. The Garden of Stone is the cemetery. The album was recorded shortly after the first Gulf War. These guys, you know, they do some political stuff. They're liberal, like a lot of rock and rollers. And so this, you know, came about when they were hanging out. Eddie was hanging out with Chris Cornell from Soundgarden and Stone Gossard in a pool hall. And George Bush, the first one, came on television to talk about the United States invasion of Kuwait. And they were like, why are we doing this? Where are we going? Is, you know, is this going to turn into another Vietnam? Is this just greed about the oil? And so, you know, again, you know, I hate to keep referring to Rage Against the Machine, but a lot of what they were doing is that kind of against the system type stuff.
No, I like that what you say. You know, we bring up Rage Against the Machine, but I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, it's against the system. They're young and you know.
You know, I have to tell you, I when I talk about it a lot, you know, liberal, whatever it might be, but there's a machine.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna look at that. There's a machine, or as George Carlin would say, it's a big club and you ain't in it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so I get it. We just talked iPhone Droid, so we know what I'm about.
So again, this is
I'm
one of
still
those
raging against the machine, my friend.
Yeah. So again, this is one of those songs. It's not frequently played, but again, live, so powerful. So this one is Deep.
On the edge, a windowsill. Ponder says maker, ponder says will. To the street below, he just ain't nothing, but he's got a great view, and he sings the old deep end. Oh, it touches the bottom into the deep end.
So this song is about drug addiction, and he's in too deep, but he can't touch the bottom. So this is somebody who's in that cycle where they're not bottoming out, and you know, it continues until that happens, right? So
Funny you say that. I know. Was a point in my life I was reaching up to touch the bottom.
yeah. So they, you know, in this scene there was a lot of drugs. A lot of these guys were, you know, not Pearl Jam, but a lot of their friends were in the heroin and that kind of stuff. And so they saw this stuff happening around them, and it, you know, was part of what they were writing about.
Yeah, you know what? It really was the scene because, you know, we talked about it earlier. A lot of people dying.
Yeah.
A lot of people dying.
So let's talk about the last song on the album. This is Release.
Let's.
So again, a lot of build up. And this kind of droning riff here. So, you know, this song is this kind of droning and then builds up to this big release, you know, which again, live is amazing. And they actually have opened with this. So they might come out to something slow sometimes, have this nice slow and then build up and then explode. Sometimes
Sure.
they'll come out and right out of the gate go heavy. But this song, so the story about Eddie, the story about the father, the stepfather is actually Eddie Vedder's story. The you know, the incest part is made up. That's not accurate, not his real life. So
Thank
this song for him was a real emotional song. And the way it started was the band was playing this riff and Eddie got up there and the lyrics just started coming out of him. So again, this stuff is just flowing out. The other side of it, it was super emotional for the band because they had just lost Andrew Wood from Mother Love Bone recently, you know, in the past year or two. And so they were still dealing with that. He's dealing with his history with, you know, not knowing who his dad was. And it comes together into this beautiful song that you know, is super, super emotional.
You know, it's great. I was just thinking, you know, I'd love to know where their influences were and who their influencers were. Like, go through it. 'Cause I hear a lot in this song, the guitar work, you know, it's almost like took me back to some of like George Harrison with the sitar, you know,
Sure.
you know, a little bit of an influence of
Yeah.
just interesting to hear it. That little pecking of it was like had a little Indian influence to it, you know.
Little
just-
bit, right? It's
You
just
know,
that,
yeah,
that
just-
riff. Yeah.
That riff, yeah,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
you could hear it, you know. I was thinking of Within and Without You, you know, when I was hearing this. That's where usually I connected. So
Well-
somewhere, I'd love to have a conversation with him. See if you can make that happen.
Yeah, let me hook that up, set that up for you. So I know that they're influenced by all the classic rock stuff. So Beatles, Zeppelin, they
Yep.
do a lot of Beatles covers. They've done I've Got a Feeling.
I
So
got a
this so they play I've Got a Feeling by the Beatles live a lot. So they have the influences of Beatles, the Zeppelin, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Kiss. They also have some punk influences. Eddie Vedder likes the Who a lot. They
Mhm.
like, you know, some of the early punk bands and things like that. So it's a whole mix of these 70s classic
Yeah.
rock bands that they really, you know, grew like, you know, what they grew up with, right?
Good. I'd give anything to hear I Got a Feeling by Pearl Jam. You
Yeah.
got to be recording somewhere, right? I'm gonna see what
I
can do.
probably have one that I can send
That'd
you.
be
I've got like
great.
a million of their bootleg albums.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That would be great to hear.
All right. So that's Pearl Jam 10.
Pearl Jam 10.
There you go.
You know
So-
what? And I want to throw this in because it's my little nugget. And Don, thanks. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I really did. You know, the music, everything, hearing it from me. Like I said, I might not have known or owned this album, but I've listened to it many, many, many times. And it was
Yeah.
amazing. But, you know, I realized I want to throw something in. This is inside the album, ladies and gentlemen. And this really was a CD. I discovered that. It started out as a CD, but in case you're wondering, 3 years later, it was released as an album.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, well, it was all CD back then, right?
All
There was
CD,
not,
right?
there
I
was
I
there was like the
wondering when we were doing
vinyl
this,
was
I
kind of
was like-
dead.
I was wondering when we were doing this, I'm like, you know, inside the album, right? That's what we're doing here. And I did it and I checked it out and it was, this was released as a CD. 3 years later, it became an album.
Cool.
So there you go.
Good
Inside
tidbit.
the album.
All right. Thanks for watching. And next week, we're going to be doing a little Eric Clapton. We're going to hit Slow Hand.
Now we're talking.
So we'll
All
go
right.
back to Tommy's Day next week.
Go back to Tommy's era.
All right, thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, don't forget to subscribe. We've got some merch on the website, insidethealbum.com. So
Yep.
you could check that out, some t-shirts and mugs and stuff like that. So hope you enjoy the episode and we'll see you next week.